game is just played. Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40! Can't wait! Let's go!
Good morning and welcome. It is Coffee and Sports. It is the morning show here on Sports Empire Network. Thank you so much for making us part of your morning routine, whatever it is that your morning routine looks like. I am Chris, and of course, that is Mo. Mo, how are you this morning, sir?
Coming off of a very interesting football Sunday, but we have our playoff matchup set, so let's go.
Mo, let's start with this. We will start with the Sunday night football game last night. The AFC East was on the line. The Miami Dolphins played host to the Buffalo Bills. And Mo, as a Dolphin fan, I'm going to have some clarity this morning as well. And I am just going to accept the fact that the Miami Dolphins cannot beat the Buffalo Bills. And I understand any given Sunday, and I understand that they are never going to acknowledge that to themselves. I understand that that isn't going to change if they meet each other again in the playoffs. But there comes a certain point in time when you just have to look at what has happened, and you just have to look at the current information. And the current information is that the Dolphins have played the Buffalo Bills 13 times in recent history, and they've lost 11 of those games. And of those two victories, one was when Josh Allen short threw a wide open receiver in the end zone in the final minute of the game. And the other was when they got a goal line stand in the final minute of the game. Of those 11 losses, half have been blowouts and half have been like last night. Games where the Dolphins did enough to win, but just didn't end up getting the result. And Mo, I look at it, and we've talked about this before. The NFL is a matchup league. And I've said this on this show before. The Dolphins, for whatever reason, they do not match up well against Josh Allen, and they do not match up well against Lamar Jackson. And it's not just the Mike McDaniels regime. It was also the Brian Flores regime. It was also the Joe Philbin regime. If you look back at the Dolphins over the last 6 or 7 years, and with the Ravens, it goes a little more than that. The Ravens is probably the last 11 or 12 years. For whatever reason, they consistently lose to both of those teams. So for me, Mo, I accept it. It is what it is. Will the Dolphins ever beat the Bills again? I'm sure they will at some point. But looking at the last 6 seasons, 2-11 against them, I'm going to say the Dolphins just, for whatever reason, don't match up against the Buffalo Bills.
And the interesting thing is, it's not just offensively or defensively, it's offensively. For whatever reason, the way the Bills, their coverage packages seem to do just enough that it could control the Dolphins offense. They don't allow for explosive plays. They give up the short stuff. They've been short tacklers. They get just enough pressure on Tua to where he's got to get rid of the ball maybe a beat or two sooner than he would like to. And you can see it impacts him in terms of his accuracy. So, yeah, I do think Buffalo has proven to be better. And look, last night was one of those games as you watched it. I'm not a Dolphin fan. You are. But as you watched it, you're like, all right, the guy tipped it. Then this guy catches the ball. Like, when that happens, you're like, it might not be your night. But when the punt return happens, it's not going to be your night. And they scored. Those are two of their scores. And look, like I said, I went into the game like you, thinking the Dolphins would find a way to win. And I think even though you can say luck was on their side, there's nothing wrong with being lucky at times. Buffalo seems to just have the Dolphins number. Like you said, maybe it just comes down to something as simple as it's a matchup thing. And as they go into the playoffs, who's to say Buffalo gets knocked off by somebody else? Miami matches up more favorably with another team. Matter of fact, I actually think coming into the playoffs, and normally I don't do this, I don't do this, but I think Miami matches up excellent against Kansas City. I really do. And I'm calling it the Tyreek Bowl, but I think that's going to be an interesting matchup. The Chiefs have a very good defense, but the Dolphins know going in what you have to stop when you're going up against that offense. You bracket Travis Kelce and you live with the results of playing one-on-one versus those wideouts. And I think Miami has the ability to do just that.
Well, the Dolphins turned the Buffalo Bills over 3 times last night. They have 2 picks in the end zone. They have a ridiculous one-man show that was Christian Wilkins with the sack, the forced fumble, and the fumble recovery all before he hits the ground. He does all 3 of those things.
That was freakish.
And what do you get on the other side? You get Josh Allen throwing a ball directly into the helmet of a Dolphins receiver. It ends up being caught in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. You get a special teams play where a Dolphin linebacker rips up his knee on punt coverage, takes out his own player, which opens up a hole and allows Buffalo to go 95 yards, right? It's one of those things where I don't take anything away from Buffalo. Buffalo won the game. I will tell you right now, Buffalo has historically been a better team than the Miami Dolphins because at the end of the day, when you win 11 out of 13 times, you are the better team. But now let me take Miami out of this. Josh Allen continues to turn over the football. He has done it the entire time they've been on this winning streak. He has done it the entire time they've won these 5 games in a row. And I don't take wins away from teams, Mo. I am not the kind of person that does that. You win the games on your schedule, and then you move on. But I will say this right now to Buffalo Bill fan. If Josh Allen continues to play the way that he has played on this winning streak, it is going to catch up to him in the playoffs. You cannot turn the ball over in the playoffs, especially at the rate that he is doing it, especially against the quality of team that he was doing it against. He did it 3 times against another playoff team in the Dolphins. He turned the ball over against the lowly Patriots. He turned the ball over against the lowly Chargers. He's been doing this. Well, he's been doing it all season. He was second in the league in turnovers going into last night's game. I don't know where he finished. I don't know how many he was behind in second, but he had 3 by himself last night. So he could be first. I don't know what the final stat looks like. But at the end of the day, just like I have to accept Miami doesn't match up well with Buffalo, Buffalo needs to accept this is Josh Allen. He is a turnover machine. And you hope that you get games like last night, and you hope you get games like what happened the last 3 games, which were all W's, even though he was turning the ball over in poor situations in those games. And you hope you get seasons like this where he turns the ball over the most or second most in the league, but he's still responsible for 85% of your team's touchdowns. Right. That's what you have to live with that. That's where we are at this point. And I think it's fair to say nothing is going to change as far as Josh Allen and the turnovers go. Yeah, we saw Dable get him down that 1 year, but I would argue at this point that was a blip and not something that's going to be the normal going forward. So we'll see. We'll see what the Buffalo Bills do in the playoffs. But Mo, I
live with that.
Yeah, I think the conversation again for Buffalo is going to be, does Josh Allen cost you playoff games?
And I think you have to live with the good and the bad of Josh Allen. You can see some of the plays he makes that are Superman plays that maybe only Josh Allen can make that are positive plays, but you can also see him forcing the ball into spaces that the receiver's not open. That's also part of the Josh Allen experience. So he is a special talent, and of course he's one of the top quarterbacks in football, but like somebody I would say from the past, like a Brett Favre, you live with the very good of Brett Favre and you live with the very bad, which was usually the pick 6. Josh Allen is one of those kind of guys that the highs are going to be the ultimate highs and the lows are going to be very low. I go into this thinking, yes, Buffalo has won down the stretch. They won the division, but I don't feel like they're a favorite. I know a lot of people are saying, like, next to the Ravens, the Buffalo Bills are the most dangerous team in football. If you want to use the most dangerous team, maybe, but they're also the same team that it wouldn't surprise me if they lost in the first round. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I think there's an inconsistency there. When you watch them play, it's almost like you're watching two different football games. The offense looks elite, explosive at times, and then there's turnovers left and right that derail the whole team. I think that's all part of the Josh Allen experience.
I think if you're looking at the AFC, it's Baltimore, and then it's everybody else.
Agreed.
Now, like I just said, if Miami plays Buffalo again, I'm not going to pick Miami. I think Buffalo will win that football game. But at the same time, I can see Buffalo losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I wouldn't be shocked by that. I can see Buffalo losing to the Cleveland Browns. I wouldn't be shocked by that. So I think Baltimore would rightfully be favored against any of the other 6 playoff teams in the AFC. I think that's fair. I think every other team you look at, there would be some teams they'd be favored against, and there would be other teams they wouldn't be favored against. And I think that's what the AFC is going to look like. And Mo, I'm okay with that because I think it's going to make for interesting playoffs. I like Miami going to Kansas City. Had Miami won their division last night and played Buffalo again, I don't know how I would feel about Miami beating Buffalo twice in a row because historically, Miami loses to Buffalo a lot. So now would I have preferred that? And don't get me wrong, and I know Dolphin fans yesterday were rooting for a tie because they wanted to play the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round of the playoffs. I never root for my team to lose. Correct. Even if it would benefit them in the long run, even when they were in the Joe Burrow sweepstakes, I just can't sit there and actively root for my team to lose. Now, when a game is over, I can say things like, I'm okay with them losing. Now, I've done that before.
Right.
But I cannot watch my team play and hope they don't do well. I physically cannot do that. Maybe that makes me a weird fan. I have no idea. But last night, I was rooting for the Dolphins to win the game. I threw things a couple of times at moments when I was not happy with them. I was rooting for them to win. And had they beaten Buffalo, I'd be rooting for them to win in the playoff game. So I understand the argument that the Steelers might be an easier matchup than playing Buffalo again or going to Kansas City. But let me say this. If you are a Dolphin fan, last night wasn't much of a damn home game for us, now was it? Half the entire stadium on the Buffalo side of the field where the bench was all Buffalo Bills fans. Right. So I don't know what kind of home field advantage the Dolphins have, aside from it being a little bit warmer. So, yeah, would I prefer to be playing 60 degrees next weekend and not -4? Because that's what it's looking like out there in Kansas City. Absolutely. But if you've been watching Hard Knocks, you might have noticed that Dan the Man gifted the quarterback room isotoners for Secret Santa. So awesome. Hopefully Tua and company will bring the isotoners with them, and we'll see what happens in the Tyreek Bowl.
Yeah, I actually saw a local announcer in Miami talking about like it might get up to 0. Like it might rise up to 0.
Mo, there was so much that happened in the NFL yesterday. Let's take a moment and kind of go through it as we piece together what the NFL playoff picture is going to look like for this season. We said going into this week that we were excited and we thought a lot of different things were going to happen, and we were not disappointed. So we'll just go through kind of game by game. We'll start off with the Seahawks. The Cardinals were trying to play upset. There was a portion of the game where they were leading Seattle. Seattle needed to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. Obviously, if you have the quarterback for the Cardinals, Kyler Murray, he has his spot solidified for next season. Ultimately, it didn't really matter for Seattle because Green Bay held their side of things up, so it knocked Seattle out of the playoffs. Smart move by Arizona to build around Kyler next season, Mo?
I think so. I think you can build around Kyler Murray. I think he showed them enough that he's still a special talent and a special player. Put some more explosive talents around him, build out the rest of that offense. I think Kyler Murray is the way to go.
The Chiefs and the Chargers, it wasn't great football. It was backup quarterbacks. It wasn't a lot of offense. 13-12, the Chiefs get that victory. They weren't really playing for much. I don't think any of their starters actually played in that game. Obviously, their situation was already set up. Obviously, there's going to be changes, big changes next season for the Chargers. Their coach is already gone. Will Harbaugh be there? Will Bill Belichick be there? There's a lot of different questions that we're asking. But let me ask you this, Mo. I saw a tweet yesterday, and the tweet basically said, unless you're one of the 4 teams below, if you have an opportunity to draft Caleb Williams, you take him. And the Chargers were not one of the 4 teams below. And to me, I said, what are we talking about?
Really?
Wow. Right. Is Caleb Williams a better quarterback than Justin Herbert?
I'm going to say no. But that doesn't mean potentially he could one day have a ceiling to where he's as good or better. But right now, today, or maybe for right now, today, in the next 2 or 3 years, man, they're putting a lot into Caleb Williams, and
that's
I'm
a lot,
for,
right? That's
I am,
a lot,
and I'm all for potential of what you could be, but would the Chargers really move off of Herbert to go? Yeah, Caleb Williams. That's our look. That would just blow me away if they made that move. I mean, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I just don't see it happening.
If you're the Chargers, I'm excited to see what happens when you get and I'm not trying to tear apart Staley here, but I think he was just over his skis. I think that the job was too big for him. He never got his side of the football correct, and he was probably there a lot longer than he should have been. I'm intrigued to see what happens, regardless of who they bring in, whether it's Harbaugh or Belichick or somebody else. I'm intrigued to see what Herbert looks like with a coach that is more competent. And hopefully they make that competent hire. I think they need to address the wide receiver room with the Chargers because they have 2 great receivers who are always hurt. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are always hurt. They're never playing, much less at the same time. They're going to need to take a look at Austin Eckler. Was this just a blip because of what was going on with the organization? Or is he hitting that, running back wall that exists out there? Because he went from 2 seasons ago, he was one of the top backs in the league production-wise, to not that much happening this season. But he dealt with injuries. He dealt with a lot of flux inside that organization. This team, because they have the quarterback, has the potential to be a top 5 or top 10 team.
I think
they have the quarterback position correct. Now they just have to figure out everything else that's around him. Staying in that division, Mo, the Raiders finish off their season on a high note, knocking off the Denver Broncos. Antonio Pierce should be the head coach for the Raiders.
1,000%.
I just don't know if they'll do it because he's not a household name.
Well, that's the issue. Mark Davis likes the big, shiny things, but maybe just once he'll go against his natural instinct and give the job to the guy who's earned it, and a guy who the team believes in. Like, he's already galvanized, and he's bound to that team. There's a connection there that, with the momentum that they built, the way they played down the stretch, why would you not want that kind of continuity going in the next season?
When we came into the season, I think a fair projection, well, first of all, most people thought the Raiders would be a dumpster fire. But if you were talking about the Raiders' absolute ceiling, you were probably talking 6 or 7 wins. This team, without the quarterback that was supposed to be their starter this season, firing their coach, won 8 games. That was an 8-win team, Mo. They far and away exceeded expectations. It's funny, as I was sitting here talking, I slowed down for a minute because I was like, who was their coach? I know they fired their coach. Who was? Oh, Josh. Got it. I totally blanked on who was coaching them this season.
Don't worry. Josh will get another job.
8 wins, Mo, for a team that most predicted to win a handful without their starting quarterback, firing their coach midway through the season. That's impressive. And if the Raiders turn their back on Antonio Pierce, then at that point, there's only so much you can do, right? I mean, he did, in my opinion, everything you could do to secure that job. This was never going to be a playoff team. It was never realistic for you to think that he was going to turn them around and get them into a playoff situation. But he damn near did. He damn near did that, Mo. And Gene brings up a great point, because it was only a few seasons ago that there was another interim coach with the Raiders and
he should have had the job too.
Right. That had a coach fired midseason and got them into the playoffs, and they didn't stick with him. So will history repeat itself a few seasons later? I sure as hell hope not, Mo. But at the end of the day, I have to take a step back and go, well, it's the Raiders.
It might be just that simple. It's the Raiders and it's Mark Davis, and I'll leave it at that.
The Rams win a game against the Niners, in which a lot of backups played. But one backup who did not play was Puka Nacua, who is now the best rookie wide receiver in NFL history. He takes down 2 records yesterday. He takes down the record for most receptions by a rookie wide receiver. He takes down the record for most receiving yards by a rookie wide receiver. Mo, what a great season for this young man. He will not win Rookie of the Year. That's going to go to CJ Stroud. So as great as this season has been, he is not going to end up with that ultimate accolade. But what a great year for a young man who essentially, Mo, came out of nowhere.
Correct. Not highly touted. CJ Stroud is highly touted. Played at one of the big name schools. So he came in with that kind of clout. The expectations were through the ceiling for him. Puka Nacua came into the league, and I honestly think that the Rams were like, let's see if this guy's going to make the roster, right? And he exploded onto the scene. And I know early into the year, I was like, who's this kid on the Rams putting up these numbers? And I thought, well, he'll hit the wall and he'll come down to reality. That never happened. He got better as the season went on. And if you watched any of their games, this kid, as a rookie, is a terrific route runner. And he's a physical wide receiver. Like he plays in between the lines. He's physical. He kind of reminds me of a young Sterling Sharp. Surprisingly quick, but he runs with power. But his route tree, he has the route tree of a 10-year veteran. Like, he's very impressive. And talk about a find. Like, when we talk about how some front office don't get it right, to get this guy, and you still have Cooper Kupp, who can probably still give you or play at a high level for another 2 or 3 years with Stafford. The Rams right now, we keep talking about it. You said this coming into the year. I didn't see it. I'm guessing you didn't see Puka coming either.
I didn't see Puka.
But I didn't see it. And now you're looking at one of the most explosive offenses in football and the scariest team in the NFC.
You look at the Rams, and when Kupp came back, the narrative was, all right, Puka did a great job, keeping things afloat while Kupp was out. Kupp is back. His numbers will fall off. He'll be back to, just being a rookie. And he never let the opportunity go. The Rams saw something in him and they trusted it. And that's another important part of this, Mo, because you see injuries and you see guys step up during injuries, and then the starter comes back and they kind of fade into the background. Now, that could be a talent thing. That could be the team being like, yeah, they're playing a little above their level for those few games. Right. We appreciate them stepping up, but that's not really the player they are. Props to the Rams for realizing this is the player he is, and then using that once Kupp came back and Stafford got healthy, and that allowed the team to be put into this position. But Mo, I don't know why no one's talking about this. The bigger story, I think, from that game is that Carson Wentz out-dueled the next coming of Steve Young. And
he did.
I mean, if you're Carson Wentz, you might this is the closest he will ever come to beating Steve Young, and it's pretty much like he did it. So I think he should be getting his flowers this morning as well.
Looks like Carson Wentz is going to be very sought after in the offseason.
Extremely sought after.
all jokes aside, because of his talent, and maybe he's been inconsistent at a minimum, inconsistent throughout his career. As a backup, Wentz is probably as good as you can get as a backup, talent-wise. There's no question about that. I don't think you want him as a starter, but as a backup, I think that's his perfect role in the NFL going forward.
Well, Wentz's biggest issue is he's not a locker room guy. And every locker room he's been in for an extended period of time has turned against him. And I'm not saying that it's a them issue. I'm saying it's a him issue.
Sure.
He is not a locker room guy. He is a competent quarterback. And he is a guy that, with weapons around him, he can win you 8, 9, or 10 games. In a backup role, he can get you a couple of wins in spot starts. That's what you need from the backup position. Right. And there are a few teams this season that wish they had more at their backup position because the season might have went differently for them. One of those teams, and we're going to stop here for a second because we have a lot to break down from this game. One of those teams is the New York Football Giants, who knocked off the Philadelphia Eagles 27-10 in yesterday's game. The Eagles are officially reeling into the playoffs. They had the all-player meeting with A.J. Brown this past week. Then he had his own little thing where he didn't want to speak to people, but then he did speak to people. And when he did speak to people, he kind of said the right things, and you kind of felt good about it. And I'm sure if you're an Eagles fan, you strapped up and you headed into that game and you were feeling like we're going to get ourselves right, and then we're going to start the playoffs. And no. And I understand that, Hurts got hurt in that game. I think A.J. Brown got banged up as well.
He did too.
I know that Mariota played at least half the game, a good chunk of the game, whatever it might be. Regardless, you don't feel better about yourself if you're an Eagles fan heading into the playoffs. And we'll get to that later on, because I'm not saying they don't have a shot, Mo. But what I'm saying is there's just not a lot to feel good about when you hit the reset button for the playoffs to start if you're a Philly fan. But what's interesting with the New York Giants is it came out end of last week. Daniel Jones is their starting quarterback for 2024. They are going to roll with him week 1, 2024. Daniel Jones is going to be under center. And Mo, to that I say, we'll see. I think he's their starting quarterback in 2024 today and tomorrow and maybe a month from now. But let's see if he's their starting quarterback in 2024 when the first round of the draft comes to an end. Because I think it's all good to say that now, because you might be in that spot. You might have to have him as your starting quarterback in 2024. So let's not get ahead of ourselves and say anything else that would hurt his confidence. Right now, today, he's the man. We'll revisit that conversation when the draft is over to see if he is still the man. And if I was putting my money on it, I'm going to say he isn't going to be. But if you are a smart ownership team, you are not going to count your chickens before they hatch, because who knows what's going to unfold over the next 4 months.
And I think that's what the Giants are doing, right? They're hedging their bets because you don't know how things play off in the offseason or what opportunities you have, be it in the draft or via trade or something like that. I think if they have to, if things go another direction, they'll settle for Daniel Jones. But I don't think they ideally want Daniel Jones as their franchise quarterback. And I know he got the big contract, but I think they found out way before the injury, he's just not that guy. Although it's not that we didn't tell them. We did tell him. We tried to tell him many times he's not that guy. Daniel Jones actually is a backup, masquerading as a starter, but he's a backup. And I think the Giants are saying all the right things, like you said, because they're looking down the road to see about what opportunities may open up in the offseason.
And if you are a Daniel Jones fan this morning, I do not want you to confuse the two realities. Saying that Daniel Jones is the guy and we anticipate he will be the starter week 1, 2024 is not the same as saying Daniel Jones is a franchise quarterback.
True.
Those are not the same conversation. The Giants said that when they gave him the bag. That was them saying Daniel Jones is a franchise quarterback, and then he has since gone out and changed the narrative. I didn't think he ever was, but he did just get them to the playoffs. So, whatever. But again, in this world, Mo, you have to be able to take new information and use the new information and give an updated response. The new information, based on how Daniel Jones has played since he received the bag, is confirmed what many of us already thought. He is not a franchise quarterback. So we will see what better opportunity the New York Giants have, whether it be Russell Wilson, whether it be
I didn't think of that.
Kirk Cousins, whether it be drafting a quarterback, or maybe it's some combination of all three. Now, I don't know what their financial situation looks like, or if they can even do those kind of things, because that's a lot of money right there. If you're talking Daniel Jones is on your roster, Russell Wilson or Kirk Cousins is coming in, because they're going to want a lot of money. So, but we'll see. But I think they're doing the smart thing. This is how you run an NFL operation, because I'll tell you right now, if this was the Carolina Panthers, he would probably be like, well, I don't really like Daniel Jones.
Right.
Well, we'll see.
Right. Well, he'll be like, let's play it by ear. Let's play it by ear. Look, that franchise, look, I'm not even going to get into that, but yeah, they've got their issues. And look, there may be a future in the Giants where they keep Tyrod Taylor, who's always been a competent and very good backup pseudo starter. His problem has always been staying healthy, but I would argue that Tyrod Taylor is basically can do everything Daniel Jones can do, and probably slightly better.
Staying healthy, being assaulted by your team's medical staff. I mean, it comes in different forms. Speaking of teams that maybe didn't handle their quarterback situation very well, let's talk about the Chicago Bears. So the Chicago Bears probably have the biggest decision at quarterback as we head into the offseason and we head into the draft. We know that. Everyone who knows anything about football knows that. And Chicago, Mo, has not taken the New York Giants stance of placating their current quarterback in case he is there as your quarterback next season. They've taken the stance of transparency. And they have said that we are still exploring all options at quarterback for next season. And part of that process is comparing Justin Fields to potentially all the other quarterbacks we could bring in. And obviously they're referring to the draft, and obviously they're referring to Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
Mo, we know they're going to do that. We know they are going to go through that process and make a decision. That's an understood. When things are understood, Mo, you don't have to say them. Just let it rest. Right. Justin is our guy. We're excited to have him back next season. We're going to build around him. We know what you're going to do. We know you're going to scout Caleb Williams, and we know you're going to make one of two decisions. Take what could be the best quarterback to come out of the draft in the last 10 years or so, with the best one prior to that probably being Andrew Luck, or use all that draft capital to build around Justin Fields. Those are the two things you're going to do.
I think that's what it comes down to.
And we know you're going to make a decision. Justin knows you're going to make a decision. But when you say, we're still weighing our options, Mo, aren't you basically saying it's not going to be Justin?
Right. I feel like they said the quiet part out loud, and they didn't need to. You didn't need to. And clearly, if you've watched the Bears over the second half of the season, Justin Fields has not just played well, but he's earned and won over the Chicago Bear faithful. They love him. They want him. I understand everything and all the hype there is about Caleb Williams and what he could be, what he might be. But you have an opportunity, to me, to take that pick and get back riches that will build out your roster. That if Justin Fields was just an average guy, you could be competitive because you could build the roster out that well. But I think he's much more than that. I think he's talented in his own right. I think he's still developing, but to me, I actually think, to me, they should keep Justin Fields and build out the roster. But my gut instinct is when you put it out there like that, I think they're leaning towards drafting Caleb Williams.
And let's not forget, if they take Caleb Williams number 1, they're still going to get a return for Justin Fields. They haven't done anything to hurt his market. He is still going to be appealing for other teams. Now, they're not going to get the return that they would have gotten for the number 1 draft pick.
Right.
But they're still going to get picks or pieces back in a Justin Fields trade. And there is going to be 5 or 6 teams that will be knocking down your door to throw an offer your way to get Justin Fields. It just isn't going to be what it would have been had you moved the number 1 pick. And let's not forget, and I don't think this is a possibility, I think this would be 3rd on their list of things, but if for some reason they loved Drake May, it still isn't out of the possibility for them to trade down a spot or 2 to get Caleb Williams, or to let someone else get Caleb Williams, still bring in a haul, and then still be in the position to take a quarterback 2nd in the draft. Now, I don't think they're going to do that, but that's also an option out there where they're kind of getting the best of both worlds. They're still getting a little rub for the number 1 pick, depending on who they traded to, and they're still getting a rookie quarterback, and they're still going to trade Justin and get some picks and pieces for him. There's so many options when it comes to Chicago. But Mo, I kind of feel like it's a situation where when your significant other says we need to talk, it never is really it's never a conversation, right? At that point, it's you're listening because they've already thought about it, come to a conclusion, and they are ready to move forward. They're just letting you in on what's been decided at this point.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I feel they are with Justin Fields. This whole, well, we're just exploring all our options. I feel like they've made a decision, and at some point they're going to let Justin know what that decision is, and then we'll go from there.
Right. And I want to remind everybody out there who might not realize this, Justin Fields is still very young.
Very young.
This isn't some guy in his 30s, or he's the age of a lot of rookie quarterbacks that come out. Like, he's that young. And I just look, Chicago, you run your franchise how you want to run your franchise. And if you think that Caleb Williams is a transcendent player, don't get me wrong, because I think Justin Fields can be a very good football player, maybe even a Pro Bowl caliber player. But if you think Caleb Williams is transcendent, now we're talking Brady-esque, we're talking Mahomes, then you should not pass up on that. If that's what you truly believe, you don't pass up on a transcendent quarterback. So I get that. But the problem is, Chris, and you know this, what you see in college, how they play in college and what they look like at the next level, it doesn't always pan out exactly that way. And potential only matters. It only matters if they reach it or they fulfill it or exceed it. How many guys, you can go way, way back to a guy like Ryan Leaf and come forward to now, that were top level draft picks that did not pan out.
Or how, and we're going to go there. Let's talk about Trevor Lawrence. He was supposed to be a slam dunk pick at quarterback. He hasn't been terrible. I'd say he's been above average, but let's look at his first couple of seasons in the NFL. They probably haven't gone exactly what you were thinking they were going to be. If you are a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, you are looking at a team that got down huge early in the playoffs. They came back from that, but they had to overcome a huge deficit in a playoff game. You're looking at someone that's been injured off and on through his first couple of seasons. You're looking at a team that absolutely collapsed this season, and it's not all on QB1, and I'm not going to say it's all on QB1. I don't think he has an elite wide receiver on that team. I think he has a really good number 2, maybe a number 1 on some bottom tier teams in Christian Kirk. I don't think Ridley is all that. I will say that right now. I know that when he came back from his suspension, he was going to be the number 1 receiver on that team. I think Kirk is far and supreme a better wide receiver than Ridley is, and Kirk is their one. Kirk was that offense until he got injured. Ridley is a nice number 2. They have a decent tight end in Ingram who still has drop issues, and we saw that yesterday in that game. They have a nice running back in ETN, but they don't have elite playmakers around Lawrence. I'm not saying he needs to have elite playmakers at every spot, Mo, but I'm watching the game yesterday. I know that Lawrence is injured, and I know that's part of it, right? So he misses the deep ball with Ridley. And I argued this yesterday, and I will not come off this stance. It wasn't a great ball by Lawrence. He laid the ball out for Ridley. Ridley had 2 steps on the defense. Ridley dove for it, and it was off his hands. I am not a guy that says if you get a hand on the football, you should catch it. There was nothing more that Calvin Ridley could have done in that situation. He didn't slow down. He didn't come off his route. He was running full speed. He laid out for it. He would have had to have made an elite all-world play to bring that ball in and survive the contact and catch that football. And on top of the fact, he's not that guy. That's not Calvin Ridley. That is a play that maybe Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase makes once or twice a season. That's not what Calvin Ridley does. So for me, QB1's got to put that ball in a better spot. Hit him in stride because you had the room to do it and you didn't do it. So I know that a lot of Jacksonville Jaguar fans are saying, well, if Ridley just brought the ball in, well, if Lawrence put it where he needed to put it, Ridley walks into the end zone for a touchdown. He doesn't have to leave his feet to try to catch that ball. But Mo, I'm more concerned about the next 2 plays because the next 2 plays were basically the same play. It was Lawrence rolling to his left and trying to hit the little out route on the sidelines, and he airmailed both of those footballs. Neither of those footballs were in a position to be caught. And that's the stuff that I see with Trevor Lawrence where I'm like, when is that going to get better consistently? Because he does a lot of things great, right? But I feel like we see moments with him where he just needs to be accurate on a 7-yard out route. And he airmails it by 3 or 4 yards. And that's the stuff where until he fixes that, or until he finds a way, and maybe it was the shoulder, he's been banged up, I get it. There's a lot of different things that go into that, Mo. But this is the same critique that I have of Tua sometimes. You saw in Tua's game last night. There are 3 or 4 balls that Tyreek should not have had to have gone up in the air to catch. Tua was throwing the ball high last night, and that was an issue. Part of that cost him the game. Tyreek dropped a few balls that if he was in a better rhythm, I don't think he would have dropped last night. So I think that's all related. So when I look at Lawrence, yes, the ceiling is there. He has all the talent and the tools in the world, but I see him do things like that on a regular basis because it wasn't just yesterday's game. This has been his MO this season. And then you know how the NFL is, Mo. Most games are tight. Most games are close. Those things matter. So for me, that's where he needs to improve. That's, in my opinion, how he's holding the team back. I'm not saying it's all him, but if you're going to walk away from this Jacksonville Jaguar season saying Lawrence is fine, it's everybody else around him, then I'm going to say you didn't really watch Jacksonville Jaguar football this season.
My bad. Got my mic mixed up. The same way you came into this season really high on the Rams, I was one of those that was hesitant to wrap my arms around the Jaguars.
You called that.
I was not high. I wasn't high on the Jaguars. Everybody was like, they should run away with the division. And I didn't see that. And it was to some of the points that you made. He has very good playmakers around him, but he doesn't have any elite playmakers around him. And I think that he needs that. I look at Trevor Lawrence and I remember how dominant he was in college and how high we were on him coming out. He hasn't been a bad quarterback. Let me be very clear. He has not been I wouldn't call him a disappointment in the sense he's some kind of bust. He's far from that. But I think they thought he was going to be transcendent, Chris, that he was going to be where Burrow and Mahomes, it's in that range, right? And I don't see that from him. I see a guy who's a good quarterback. Like, as much as heat as Kirk Cousins takes, and I know he's been in the league a lot longer, I don't think Trevor Lawrence is better than Kirk Cousins. He's not. He's not better than Kirk Cousins. I think Trevor Lawrence does just enough to get your hopes up. But when it matters most, the line, the devil's in the details, he misses on the simple or the basic throws, the easy stuff. I actually watched the game the other day as well, and I lost count on how many passes he threw that sailed over the receivers. I mean, they were uncatchable, uncatchable balls, and those kind of things deflate your team and just bring you down. I'm not saying the Jaguars don't have a bright future. I just think that if they turn around and they come back with pretty much the same roster and they don't try to add some playmakers, something to give Trevor Lawrence another weapon, some kind of edge, I think you're going to get the same results unless Trevor Lawrence takes a very huge leap in his overall development as a quarterback. I just think that he's been good. I think we can agree he's been good, but I don't think that when I look at him, I don't see a special quarterback. I just see a good quarterback.
Mo, he's 3 seasons into the league. The dumpster fire was season 1, 3-14. We know what the head coaching situation was. They get a competent head coach in there. He goes 9-8 as a starter. He gets into the playoffs. They have the great playoff win, and then they exit. And then this season, he missed 1 game. So he played 16 games this season. He was 8-8. So I know that record for a starting quarterback isn't everything. And when you start your career 3-14, it's going to take you a few years to dig out of that record that you started with. So you say he's 20-30 as a starter, and it sounds pretty awful, but it isn't as bad as it sounds given how terrible his first season was and how terrible that organization was his first season. But then you kind of look at his stats. He threw 17 picks year 1. He threw 14 picks this season, 25 touchdowns last season, 21 touchdowns this season. He's a good quarterback, but he looks to be a quarterback, Mo, and we say this sometimes about quarterbacks in the NFL. He looks to be a quarterback that can't overcome. He looks to be a quarterback where he needs things around him to be going well more often than not. And think about this. If you take Trevor Lawrence and you put him on the Kansas City Chiefs, how many games do they win this season?
My guess is it would look like his first season in the league, somewhere around 3 or 4 games.
And I think that's the difference, right? That's the difference between Patrick Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence. And when Trevor Lawrence came into the league, I don't think anyone was saying, oh, he's going to be better than Patrick Mahomes. But I think they were saying he's going to be at some point on that same level. He has that special. He has that talent. He is that transcendent kind of player. And that right there is an example of how far he is from that level. You put him on the Chiefs this season, the Chiefs are not winning their division because look at the better talent that he had around him in Jacksonville. And he went 500 as a starting quarterback.
Right.
With an 8-3 start, with multiple chances to lock up this division, and they just couldn't do it. And again, it's not all on him, Mo.
It's not.
But there comes a point where if you look at what's happening in Kansas City, you give Mahomes the credit. He overcame. He overcame terrible receivers. At times, he overcame bad play calling by Andy Reid. And early in the season, he overcame suspect defense. Defense is rounded out. They're playing great now. That's no longer an issue. But he overcame all those things. Trevor was in a better situation where he just had to handle business and beat teams that they should have beat teams that you were better than, and he couldn't. So doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback.
No, far from it.
Just means that he needs more around him to get to where you want to go.
And is he capable? I like what you said about overcoming. I've seen Patrick Mahomes have a special moment or multiple special moments. I've seen Joe Burrow have games where you're like, this guy carried the team. For all his flaws, what we know for a fact is Josh Allen, good Josh Allen, can carry a football team. He can carry a football team. There was a play late in the game versus your Dolphins. I think it was 3rd and 13.
And you knew it. You knew he was going to run the damn ball, and they still couldn't stop him from getting 15 yards.
Right. But I think Josh Allen is the only quarterback that could have ran that like a fullback and made that first down. And that's what I mean. I don't think Trevor Lawrence has shown us the special yet, at least yet. We're not saying that it can't happen, but he hasn't shown us that to this point in his NFL career. So I'm not down on Trevor Lawrence. I just think that people were so high on him that he has not lived up to those expectations yet.
Mo, at approximately 12:02 a.m. this morning, just past the stroke of midnight, the Atlanta Falcons pull the cord and they fire Arthur Smith, not even giving him the opportunity to get that 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. Black Monday firing. The stroke of midnight, it was over for Cinderella in Atlanta. But let's back up a little bit and go to the end of the Atlanta thrashing that they received from the New Orleans Saints.
I know where you're going.
First off, if you were a Saints fan, it's got to break your heart to watch them play the last 2 weeks, because that's what the ceiling was. What you saw from the Saints the last 2 weeks was what we thought this team was going to be the entire season.
Right.
And it's got to hurt just a little more to be like, oh, we figured it out for the last 2 games. If we figured this out 6 weeks ago, we probably win the division. But it is what it is. But on the last play of the game is in hand. The Saints are up by a lot. It looks like they're going to take a knee at the 1 yard line. Supposedly, that was what was called from the sideline. And Jameis Winston said, you know what? My boy needs to get a touchdown because we love him so much. So they fake the knee, hand it off to the running back. He plows into the end zone for the touchdown. Arthur Smith was irate at the end of the game. The Saints head coach, Dennis Allen, was very apologetic for it. The players seemed to just do what they thought was right in the moment, Mo. Do you have an issue with that?
I mean, look, they were wailing on them. And I just thought maybe you can take a knee. But you know what? I'm also of the old school, like, if you don't like it, stop it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I get why Arthur Smith was mad. Arthur Smith was mad because he knew he was getting fired. He was already mad. He knew he was getting fired. So before the game was over, Arthur was like, I'm fired. And this dude's running up the score. Yeah, Arthur Smith wanted a piece of Dennis Allen. Like, and to Dennis Allen's credit, he was very apologetic in the moment because Arthur Smith is raging at this dude. Like, you could tell Arthur Smith, he wanted a piece of Dennis Allen in the moment. And Dennis Allen, I know, I understand. I got caught up in the drama, but I really think it wasn't just about the game for Arthur Smith. It was about the writing being on the wall. Like, he knew, well, he probably thought he was going to get fired, like you said, in the morning. He didn't know it was going to happen like at midnight. Like, he thought, at least I can get a good night's sleep, kind of put this all together. And I guess the owner of the Falcons was like, nah, you don't need a good night's sleep. Sleep on this. Fired.
It's almost one of those situations where, like, he knows what's coming. He's upset that it happened. He's embarrassed. He's embarrassed for a couple of reasons. He's embarrassed because, you know, your owner has come out and said things like, I'm torn. I've been going back and forth with Arthur. And I don't know which way. Again, there's some things we don't need to say, Mo. We know you're going to make a decision at the end of the season. Don't sit here and tell I don't know what to do. We don't want to hear that. That makes you sound like an idiot, because we all think you should have fired him last season.
Right.
So the fact that you're in the middle of a disastrous season with a terrible quarterback and you're like, I don't know what to do, that's not giving us any confidence in your ability to run your own franchise. That's number one. Number two, it's not making Arthur Smith feel any better about the situation
at all.
But there was a point about halfway through that game, Mo, where Arthur knew he was getting fired.
Oh, yeah.
He knew that he needed to win that game convincingly to have even the smallest hope of keeping his job. So halfway through that game, when he knows we're probably not winning this game, he knows he's getting fired. And then on top of that, they run the score up. And then on top of that, they score another touchdown at the end that they didn't need to score. So in that moment, he's just a mess, and he knows what's coming, and he's angry at the world.
Right.
And poor Dennis Allen was there to take it.
I think Arthur Smith lashed out at Dennis Allen, maybe the way he wanted to lash out at Arthur Blank, right? Maybe he wanted to come at him like that. Like, I know you're going to fire me. Just do it. Like, can you imagine knowing you're getting fired and you're looking up at the clock and you're like, all right, so there's 11 minutes. There's 11 minutes left
of my career here.
Right, of my career here. And this guy's still scoring on me. That's great. So, yeah, that had to be the longest fourth quarter in his life.
Mo, I 100% agree with, if you don't want them to score, then play defense and stop them from scoring. The only caveat that I will give you there is they didn't come out and line up like they were going to run a play.
It was shady.
They came out and they lined up like they were going to take a knee, which means there was zero reason for the defense to think they were going to run a play. I don't have these numbers in front of me, Mo, but I can guarantee you, if you looked at the number of times an NFL team has come out in that formation and actually ran a play, it's probably going to be less than 1%. So there is no reason for that defense to think you're going to run a play. So I don't think that applies here. So I understand why Arthur Smith was upset, because there was no reason to run a play there. No one thought you were going to do it. So I get it. But this was a long time coming if you're the Atlanta Falcons, and you've heard it all throughout the last few months here on Sports Empire Network. Gene says that is the home of Justin Fields next season. So we shall see.
What a fit it would be. Yeah, I think it'd be a great fit if it should ever come to fruition. Look, Atlanta, it's one of those sports cities that when it comes to football and basketball, they need some good news. They need a reason to cheer. They need a reason to cheer, because all they have is the Braves.
That's true. That's true. Let's close out with this, Mo. I thought we were going to open with this, but then I watched the game and I'm happy, but it was a little lackluster for me, and that is the Baker train. The Baker train got the job done, but it looked like the Baker train had like a leak in the fuel system or something. 9-0 against the Panthers.
I was sweating.
No touchdowns. It was like 6-0 late in the third quarter. I'm like, what are we doing here?
I was worried.
Carolina had that one touchdown that should have been a touchdown, but the ball was knocked out at the half-yard line while the guy was in the air. Like, it was a lot closer than it needed to be. But Baker is in the playoffs, and that's all I care about.
He's in the playoffs, and to your point early in the show, with the way the Buccaneers defense has played, if you get good Baker, or the Baker that we've had for most of this season, the Eagles need to bring their A game. They need to bring their A game. They need to find it. Anybody that thinks that they're just going to walk in and just maul the Buccaneers, that's not going to be the case. This is going to be a close football game. It really is.
Mo, if anyone is predicting the Eagles to walk into that game and handle the Buccaneers, you have not watched Eagles football the last 5 weeks. I'm not saying the Eagles can't win that game, and we'll make our picks later in the week. But at this point, the Eagles are not walking in and handling anybody. That is not what this team is. They have proven that to everybody this entire season. So even the biggest of Eagles fans, even if you think your team's going to win this weekend, you have to know they're not going to walk in there and dominate that football team. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see.
They're so different, though, when you look at them, Chris. This was a team that was potentially going to be the number one in the NFC. Just weeks ago.
10-1.
Look at where they are now. That's crazy.
It is. It's absolutely crazy. And we're going to discuss that more later on this week. We have such a big week prepared. We got JG on the show tomorrow. He was feeling a little under the weather today, so hopefully he's feeling a little better tomorrow so we can talk some Major League Baseball. We got Gene from Wire to Wire coming up on Wednesday. It's playoff week in the NFL, Mo. The next few weeks are going to be fantastic here on the morning show. So that's it. Week 18 is come and gone. As far as I'm concerned, everything is officially reset. And now all that matters is what you do this weekend.
Yeah, that's all that matters. It's 0-0. You start fresh. And if you're a team like the Rams coming in there with that kind of momentum, you're scary. If you're a team like the Packers, look what they did. I didn't see the Packers weeks ago being a playoff team. So they're interesting as well. I look at the NFC and I think it's a little bit more balanced, at least at the top. I do think you've got the Dallas, you've got the 49ers. I think the Rams are scary. The Eagles have slid some. And in the AFC, you're right. I think it's even more wide open. It's Baltimore as an obvious favorite, and then everybody else is on the same tier, which means anything can happen in these divisional playoffs.
I'll tell you what, Mo, if you're Baltimore, you do not want to see the Cleveland Browns, because as much trouble as the Dolphins have with the Buffalo Bills, that is the kryptonite for the Baltimore Ravens. They struggle for whatever reason against the Cleveland Browns. So that might be the best shot in the AFC of someone upsetting the Baltimore Ravens. And I have nothing against the Ravens, but it would be oddly poetic to see Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns take down the Baltimore Ravens. I'm just saying.
What a story.
Right? And as we love the stories here.
We do.
But we'll get into that later on this week. That's it for a Monday morning, though, Mo. Close us out, sir.
Hey, thank you for everybody in the chat. Thanks for everybody that's listening to us right now live and everybody who will listen to us later. Check out all the great content that we have to offer on Sports Empire Network. Check out the Empire.
Make sure you're back same time, same place tomorrow morning. JG will be here to discuss Major League Baseball, and we will continue preparing for Wild Card Weekend in the NFL. All of that and more tomorrow here on Coffee and Sports. It's the morning show on Sports Empire Network, and we will see you in the morning.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, guys, any